Dear guests, merci d'accueillir. Please welcome Vice President Walt Disney Imagineering Paris and Site Portfolio Executive Disneyland Paris, David Wilson. Et maintenant, accueillons tous ensemble, let's give a warm welcome to Portfolio Creative Executive Disneyland Paris, Tom Fitzgerald.
Bravo, Tom. Welcome. You can tell we're not usually on the stage, we're usually behind the scenes, but we are thrilled to be here with you today. Are you excited as much as we are?
Wow. Look at the crowd. This is so cool. As Tom said, we are never in front of the camera. We're always backstage. We usually have 3 months to test and adjust our routine, or we wouldn't make those errors.
How many of you out there were actually here 30 years ago at the opening? Wow. How many of you were not born 30 years ago?
More. There's more.
All right, there's more.
Well, I have a question. How many of you were involved in some way or another with the opening of this park? Whether you were a former Imagineer, or a cast member, or a consultant, or a contractor, or a supplier, or a government partner. How many? Okay, not bad, not bad. Quite a few. Well, for those of you who were involved, those of you who were around, we're going to show you a little video clip now that will take a little walk down memory lane. I hope you enjoy it. Roll the clip.
bet a lot of memories.
35 years worth of videos, because we started designing the park 5 years before we delivered it 30 years ago today. So 35 years of memories, old projects and new, absolutely amazing. And since everyone may not know who everyone is, very quick introduction. Tony Baxter, a lot of you apparently do know who he is. We do not like to attribute the results of our various projects to any one person at Imagineering because it's a team job. But if you had to give credit for the beauty of the Disneyland park to one person, it would be Tony Baxter. He was the executive creative director for the Disneyland park. Tracy Eck, many of you know Tracy. Among the other things she's done, she was, if you go into the Disneyland park and you like the lighting at night, and the way the park just glistens and is beautiful, thank Tracy because she designed all the lighting for the outdoor spaces at the Disneyland park, and she's currently the art director for the Disneyland park. Another one many of you may know, Tom Morris. We say often, and it is true, that we have the most beautiful castle around the world. That's thanks to Tom. Tom designed the castle and was the creative director for Fantasyland. And Sylvie, which shoulder can't I touch? Well, Sylvie was an interior designer for Fantasyland, working with Tom at the first gate, worked on the Disney MGM Studios Europe with me, and is currently the art director for the hotels here at Disneyland Paris, including the major rehabilitations, including the major rehab of the hotel you're in right now, the Art of Marvel.
And over here, on this side, if you love Discoveryland, you love Tim Delaney, because he, among many other projects, incredible designer, and you'll hear more about that. Beth Clapperton is currently our creative director for Avengers Campus. And we're and many other things that you'll learn as we go through projects. And Bjorn is the director of design and production for Imagineering and is involved in numerous projects over here, and you're going to hear more about his. So you've got a really great group of Imagineers.
I would like to know when you first heard of this new project called Euro Disneyland and how you got involved in that.
That was another lifetime ago, you know. We had finished a couple of projects you may know. Star Tours and Splash Mountain. It was in work, and they were really thrilled with the way Star Tours was performing. So I was approached and they said, would you like to take on a bigger challenge? And I said, I had no idea what that would mean, but it turned out to be this unbelievable opportunity given to, I can't believe I had this opportunity. If you realize that in California, Anaheim doesn't have a charisma like Paris. Orlando doesn't have any sense of people going to Orlando, but here in Paris, everybody comes here to see this beautiful cultural landmark in Europe, and the task of creating something that's complementary to that is bigger than you can imagine. So when we started, the land looked like what you're seeing right there with me in front of it, and I think it was daunting, it was exciting. I took 1 year of French in high school that I said I probably will never in my life have the opportunity to use it, and boy did I use it. So that was pretty much the start of Disneyland Paris for me.
And Tony, then you were also, though, involved with changing the name, weren't you? From
Oh yeah, it was originally, as a lot of you know, I've even seen some sweatshirts today, Euro Disney. And I said, first of all, no one is a Euro. There are French people, and there are Germans, and there's English. But there aren't Euros, and so like, who are we building this for? And you know, the idea of Paris, it's a destination, as I just described, a place that you come to before Disney. It was world-renowned. Everyone dreamed of being in Paris in April, which has been 3 wonderful days for me right now. So, you know, we dropped subtle hints to Michael Eisner, like, you know, Disneyland, Paris, you know, Tokyo, Disneyland, that makes sense, you know, like, and so after a couple of years, we got them to come around to that, and it made a huge difference in the marketing of the park. because it was understandable. Families could bring children for Disneyland and have that once-in-a-lifetime romantic experience here in the city of Paris, Disneyland Paris.
We do, the team, some of the team members are up there. We put a lot of our hearts into keeping it look as beautiful as it does. And I mean, I have to say that you made our job easy because it's such a beautiful park to begin with. So it does help to maintain something that's beautiful. But it's the thing that I remember, because I started in 1990, is how the creativity and all the ideas were really encouraged as we were starting out and, learning Disney. For a lot of us, it was our first Disney project. And that was really thanks to the people in this room. So very happy to maintain it and help it grow.
That's where I was 30 years ago, sitting on top of the roof of Main Street. It's been an extremely fun ride with regards to something that this team have created. I'm very honored to be able to continue to work with the creative teams and keep pushing the boundaries with regards to what we do from an attraction standpoint.
The technology that we use to entertain people needed to be advanced, but I think the culture of Europe and also the climate that demands certain ways of handling people created a fresh look. We had covered Main Street in Tokyo because they have similar climate issues in winter, but it looks kind of, to me it was too controlling. And I know the French people love to eat outside, they love to be in the sunshine when it's available. And you know what I mean, 160 days it's not available. So we built the arcades. So that's a good example of a way of creating something that flanks Main Street behind both of the sides of it. And the other thing was putting the hotel at the front of Main Street. All of those things were the idea of making it more welcoming. And where we got that was from taking a research trip all over Europe to find out what were the ways in which things were done. How is food service handled? How is accommodations handled? And what kind of attractions are out there? Not just theme parks, but going to great museums and everything, because whatever we did needed to complement what was already here. And if you have great castles and beautiful cathedrals and everything, those don't exist in Orlando or Anaheim, and so you can be the only game in town. But we had to begin to think, and of course Tom will go into it, but like the castle had to be completely rethought to reflect fairy tales rather than being an authentic recreation of some of the Gothic structures you'd see right here 100 miles from our park.
And if I had known that 35 years ago, I may not have accepted the challenge. Right. And so the number one thing I think that we needed to do was make this castle stand out from the other 40,000 castles that are in France. But how do you do that? So everyone has a different idea of how that's done. And I think I was probably in some simpatico with Tony on the approach to that, in terms of what do we like about the Disneyland castle, what do we like about the Florida castle, and what about that kind of subset is different than the other castles that you find around here. And so we did a lot of research. And I went through a whole bunch of storybooks, old Grimm's fairy tales, N.C. Wyeth books about Robin Hood and other fairy tales, classic fairy tales. And we put together kind of a collage board that said, these are the DNA pieces. These are the feelings that we want in the castle. Kind of a softer, older, a little bit more medieval, not as much Renaissance, because the Renaissance castle, the castle at Walt Disney World is kind of a classic Gothic Renaissance castle. And those are what you find in the Loire Valley. And I was told one time by someone that we have to learn all those castles in school. Right? Okay, it cannot look like any of those. So it was really just going through pages and pages and pages of fairy tale and story books that I found out years later. Some of the books were the books that Walt Disney brought back from one of his first trips to Europe that the research library at Imagineering has. So we put together this board, and I guess we pitched it to Michael, And Michael liked the idea and the approach, and I sat down and started, well, what I did was I learned something, or I did something that I learned in a book that I got at Disneyland that was How to Draw Mickey Mouse, or Pluto, one of those. And on the first few pages, there are tutorials. And one of the tutorials is make sure your design works as a silhouette. In this case, it said make sure your animation works as a silhouette. If it reads in silhouette, it's going to be a powerful image.
It was a lot of fun. I love working on the castle because it's so gorgeous. You know, I'm just always happy to be out there. And I learned a lot of things listening to you, actually. So when we set out to refurbish it, we were really lucky because our construction partners contracted one of the best companies in France to do traditional artistry. And they accepted this contract, and they did an amazing job. And they do, you know, this is a company that only works on historical monuments. And so they are sublime craftspeople. And so the fact that they decided to work on our castle project was a big moving moment, because all of a sudden we realized, wow, for a lot of people, the castle has become like a historical monument. It's part of the culture and it belongs to everyone. And that was a really nice thing to realize. And then of course they did an amazing job. You know, we have a long tradition at Disney of and Imagineering of working with craftspeople.
It was a lot of hard work and a lot of mud. That's what I remember the most. It was a lot of mud. And we would call each other on the radio, and we were working in our Fantasyland or our Adventureland or whatever zone you had, and the radio was the way that we knew what was going on outside of our zone. So it was super interesting to, when we got to the end of the project, to go in and discover all these things that we'd heard about. But I think the thing I remember the most is the mud, yes, the mud, and again the mud. But the camaraderie, because it was very hard, and you'll have to remember that this was the first theme park in Europe, and we were a young team, scrappy. Most of us had never built a theme park before, so we had to understand. Fortunately, we had these guys. They had a lot of people to manage, and we were young and fit and scrappy, and we enjoyed it, and we made a lot of deep friendships and a lot of solid memories in building this park.
I went back to Theme Park Design 101 and started analyzing the Disney parks as we know them, and realized that with the exception of Main Street, and with the exception of Tomorrowland, all the other lands are basically collections. Whether it's Fantasyland, it's a collection of stories from different lands, different areas, you know, different times. Adventureland is the same way. It's a series of exotic ports. Everything from the Caribbean to North Africa, it's all put together under the emotional context of adventure. And when it comes to Frontierland, we have from the Southwest to the Northwest, all areas which relate to Western land or Frontierland. So it's like, well, wait a minute, we always have a problem with Tomorrowland, because Tomorrowland is a land which is dedicated to the time in which it was designed. So it's like, wait a minute, let's do something else. Let's do a collection of futures. So we decided to do a partial kind of Leonardo da Vinci land with the Orbitron. We had an H.G. Wells version of the future, which was Visionarium. We had a Jules Verne version of it with Videopolis, and eventually the Nautilus and Space Mountain. We actually even had a George Lucas land, you might even say, you know, a Michael Jackson version of the future. So once we get an idea like that, the key to getting anything done here is to get the idea about how to translate an idea into a vision and into reality.
And I drew the short straw to go over to the studio and say, I really think we need to do a partnership with either George Lucas or Steven Spielberg. And Spielberg's films are all through Universal. And so that was very unlikely that we would be working with Steven. So Ron Miller, who is Walt Disney Cinema, and running the studio, said, well, let's go up. We have a winery up in the Napa Valley. And it was a Silverado vineyard. So he said, I'll call George and we'll have a meeting there. And so the next thing I knew, Marty Sklar and myself and Rick Rothschild, I think, we're on our way up there, and we're out in the backyard of Diane Disney's house, Walt's daughter, who's serving us potato salad. Now there's no maids or anything like that. And then in comes George Lucas, and hi guys, and then Ron Miller is the head of the company. And I remember saying to myself, I said, if the plane goes down on the way home, it doesn't matter, this is as good as it gets. And George had a very interesting thing to say. He said, Disney's a #1 quality in what they do. And I believe my films are #1 quality in what they do. And he says, there's no other way a partnership in bringing these two things could happen unless it happened at Disney. And that was the beginning,
Como se va, everybody? I guess I'm the surprise guest, and I dressed for the occasion. I'm wearing my original Euro Disney name tag, the first one I ever got, and I'm coming to you from the past, from a dining room of Walt's restaurant on the ground floor that doesn't even exist anymore. I just wanted to be in the mood and congratulate all of you, because all of you are a part, at least as far as I'm concerned, of the 30th, and that you, the fans, have supported this park during its darkest times, its most difficult times, and the Imagineers, through all of these years, have kept the park beautiful, and now we can all just enjoy a 30th anniversary. So I couldn't be more thrilled to be here, also with my fellow designers, and we all have our memories. And of course, there was a long road to Euro Disney, as they say, right? Even Main Street went through many iterations. Tony and I felt originally that maybe it would even be more appealing than it is to turn the clock forward. So we actually designed a 1920s version of the Main Street with jazz, elevated trains, and frankly, we got so excited, the price tag got to be probably a lot more than they thought. And one day we went back to the Main Street we have today, but I have a secret for you. Every prisoner has a right to try to escape, and I couldn't just copy Walt Disney World with our team. So we snuck in the billboards and the excitement and a lot of the magic, even right here in Walt's restaurant, where my favorite memory was touring Sharon Disney, who actually said at the end, my dad would have loved this. So we all love it. Thank you so much, and sorry I couldn't be there. Au revoir.
In all of our other parks, we have Tom Sawyer's Island in the middle of the rivers of America. But when we came over here, we realized Mark Twain's story isn't quite the thing that it is in the United States, but the whole idea of doing caves and adventures and whatnot that we have on that island was very powerful. So why not move it to an adventure isle where you can create pirate treasures and all of those things? And then that freed up the centerpiece of Frontierland. And in every other park we've built a Big Thunder, it came last. So in the area of Frontierland and Disneyland, it was after an older ride had been taken out. In Florida, it was out of the farthest reach of the Frontierland in Florida, and the same is true in Tokyo. So here we had a shot of putting it where it wanted to be, in the middle, because the energy of the movement of the rides and the people screaming and then bells ringing and all that, it brings kind of the gold rush era to life. And that led us to another thought, and as someone had mentioned earlier, they're all forms of the American West, from the very dry Monument Valley look that Big Thunder represents to the North Woods and so forth. And we thought, I looked when I came here and I saw the Marlboro Man everywhere because he was a symbol here in Paris of the American West. Similarly, there were a lot of Native American things, and it seemed like that was the popular concept of the West. So we went to tourist bookstores in the smaller Vincennes and various places like that, and found what were the books about the West that they liked, and it was all about that great Southwest that is Monument Valley. So we said, what if we do a Frontierland that's all homogenized into the John Wayne, Monument Valley, John Ford, the director. It had that look so that when you walk through the fort, it was consistent from the Haunted Mansion looking like a gold baron's house all the way out to the Mexican end at the far end. So it's a panorama, like Tom said, but it's unified. And then I think what Eddie did by creating the location for our Grand Canyon diorama right, it's actually contiguous with the Haunted Mansion. So when you come out of the Grand Canyon diorama on our trains, it opens up, and what you just saw in diorama form is replaced with a real American West, and it's kind of a jaw drop. You know, you've been watching, and it's a very beautifully done exhibit. And then, you know, it opens up, and there you are in the West. So I think that concept of bringing the energy to the center, and then in all my 4 Big Thunders, you know, the one thing that disappointed me is that you have a certain amount of energy that you can use in each of the runouts. And because the last one has to get you into the station and then save some energy to get you down to the start, the last part was always a little bit of a disappointment in California, Florida, and in Tokyo. And I said, there's got to be a way to solve that. And the solution was, put the station over on the land, and then to get to Big Thunder, there's only one way, and that is to dive all the way below the clearance of the boats and then come up on the ride. And of course, you know what that added to it. It added the best, most thrilling opening of any thrill ride we've ever done, because you don't go up a lift, you just go like a bat out of hell down into the bottom. And then at the end, all of us that are used to the versions in California and Florida are ready for the little peter out ending, and instead, the ride dives down into the Bat Cave, and it is one of the most powerful moments on any coaster anywhere to this day. So this is definitely, I can say firmly, the very best Big Thunder we've ever built.
And then Phantom Manor for me was, well, fun to work with Tom and get to redo that story. But it was my initiation into the art of illusion, because that's what the Haunted Manor is all about, a reinvention of the art of illusion. And sometimes the most low-tech solutions can work. So that was always really interesting. It doesn't have to be high-tech, low-tech can do it too. I would have to say though, I think my favorite illusion in there is, maybe you all have the same one, I don't know, the stretch rooms. Do you like the stretch rooms? Yeah. When we redid those, it was tricky. We had some black light and some backlight, and we didn't really know how it was going to work until actually there was an accident. While we were testing, we said, whatever that is, we'll make that work. So that was the story of the stretch rooms.
All the stories from Babar the elephant to Aladdin, there's a lot of mystique about the Middle East that was popular here in Europe, that in California and in Florida, the European stories are the rage. Cinderella and all of that is someplace we dream of going. It's so different from the way our world looks like, so it's very exciting. So we thought for the entrance, why not come up with something that reflects an exotic realm for Europeans? And so the entrance to Adventureland is a bazaar, you know, right out of Aladdin, right out of the Sinbad movies. In fact, if you look carefully over on, let's see, the far left side of that, is a rock egg from the Sinbad stories. I grew up loving Walt Disney and Ray Harryhausen, who did Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. And there is a similarity between that dragon and in the castle and the Seventh Voyage of Sinbad, if you haven't seen it. And then the rock egg over here. So that gave us an entrance. And for the first time, I think Adventureland has an entrance. And like the other lands where Big Thunder becomes the central focal point, we put the treehouse directly at the center of this island. And as I mentioned to you before, we had all these caverns and experiences on bridges and things that we wanted to do. In California, you'll find them on Tom Sawyer Island, Florida too. But they fit perfectly into a pirate world, and they're, again, better here than anywhere else, because you have the pirate caverns and then the treehouse root cellar, and those are far more extensive cavern mazes than anything we've ever done, as well as Skull Rock Cove. Now, the other thing we tried to do in talking about the culture of Europe was languages are a problem, because in California we have 2 commonly spoken languages, but here there are at least 5 in the neighborhood and maybe more that come as tourists. So how do you speak to people visually? And the sketch that Dan Guzet did, I think you saw it a second ago, that showed how we might be able to tell the story of pirates without the word pirates. And so what we combined was Peter Pan's pirate ship, Captain Hook's ship, and then the Skull Rock, and then the entrance to Pirates of the Caribbean. And in a subtle way, it's adjacent to the Peter Pan ride, which is the end of Tom's Fantasyland. So there is a whole conclave of pirate-themed adventures right there that don't depend on a sign as you walk into the area. This must be where we'll find the pirates. The same is true of that Haunted Mansion, Phantom Manor. We went through, should it be the Haunted Mansion? I think that was called Maison du Haunt or something. Pardon my bad French, it's been 30 years, but that name didn't translate very well, so Phantom Manor helped that. But more importantly, you cannot look at that Phantom Manor and not see a haunted residence. Every other park we have is very beautifully maintained and doesn't really look haunted from the outside because everybody approaching it is reading the sign, Haunted Mansion. But here, it speaks to you with your eyes. And that's true, I think, of going into our pirate area. So we have a very unique Adventureland here, and we were able to add to it in our added capacity with Temple of Peril on the back, which brought another thrill aspect to the world of adventure. So I'm very pleased with this, and there's a lot of space there for you new people to build something really big in the future.
And so we're always updating, adding. Pirates, guests love Pirates. It's epic, the music is epic, the song's great, there's a lot of humor. There's, every time you go through, you discover something else. And that attraction is what inspired the film, right? Jack Sparrow came from our attraction, Pirates of the Caribbean. And so it was really only natural that he come back and live inside the attraction. So adding Barbossa Jack Sparrow was a great addition and really adds more to the epic quality. And the younger generations can really connect to it because they love those films. And then they get to see Jack Sparrow. So Jack Sparrow is gorgeous. And my favorite part of the attraction now is the last scene where there's Treasure Jack sitting up on this pile of gold in his chair, arrogant as he is, rocking back and forth and singing and talking, and he looks so real. It's just gorgeous.
What is that,
Beth, Bjorn, you seem to know everything. Why don't you tell us about this?
I know nothing.
So Bjorn, David,
no,
before we start, I think David and Natasha told me that we're opening this next thing 2022, right? We've got plenty of time.
Yeah. So,
we know we're all opening.
Yeah, we're opening soon, Natasha.
Getting in trouble.
It's been an interesting journey because if we go back to what we spoke about earlier about the Walt Disney Studios, we worked on the original Walt Disney Studios and we've gone in and demolished what we did, which is kind of weird. From a technological standpoint, Ratatouille at the time we built it was the top class of what we've done. And I have to say, through the experience of what I've been through with the team over the last 3 or 4 months, Ratatouille was really easy. We are kind of blessed with being able to come into an existing attraction in Rock and Roller Coaster and retheme it Marvel. That's going fantastically. We have video, we have audio, we have Iron Man. We demolished Armageddon and we've built a Spider-Man attraction, which is the same as the DCA attraction. We are continuing with our test and adjusting. It's a highly technical attraction, which has been a huge challenge for the teams to make functional, but it works. So, you guys, when you eventually do get to ride it very soon, you just have to get ready to get some exercise in your arms because you'll be doing a lot of this. The Iron Man figure is the first fully electric figure that this park has seen with 43 functions. The screen on the left that you see will be talking to you through a daily basis. And then just to kind of end on my piece, I'm very, very proud of my team who actually built the Quinjet, which is in DCA, and the one in Paris. So, again, you know, we've managed to take something from France that we've developed in Toy Story Playland, Ratatouille, the Quinjet, and export it out to the other parks, which I think for everybody here we should be very proud of.
And as we are opening very soon, we are sprinting towards the finish line. You know, it's an interesting time for us as a project because it's exhausting, but at the same time, it's so much fun because this is the culmination of 4 years it takes for us to do one of these messy, complicated, but stimulating projects. So we are at the end of that, and for people like us, it's just, you know, it's just party time. All the toys are together and we get to play with them. So super emotional time for us before we hand it over to all of you. Let's talk about the experience that the campus is going to be. It's going to be the second Marvel experience in this resort, the first one we are sitting in. It's a slightly different experience. This one is all about celebrating the artists of Marvel and celebrating the brand. In the campus, we are going to bring the guest into the story. We are bringing you to the campus, and the story of the campus is that the world needs more heroes. So Tony Stark and his Avengers pals set up a global initiative to develop these campuses as a way to discover, recruit, and train the next generation of heroes. So our guests will enter the campus as new recruits, and they will be able to sling webs exhaustingly like Spider-Man. They'll be able to train alongside the heroes. They'll also be able to team up with the Avengers and possibly save the world. So we're hoping that this campus is going to be an inspiration for the guests or the new recruits to feel empowered, to understand that they're part of something bigger, a global connection and access to something larger than themselves, but also, very simply, that they can discover and celebrate the everyday hero that lives within each and every one of us.
Everybody ready? More than ready.
See you soon.